First of all, I'm really excited to be here today. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. In 1998, I fell in love with what is now become the Internet of Things. I bought a Palm 7. And this little device that today is arcane was this connected to the internet experience where I had rich data all the time, right? And the apps were small and they were hard to use. But for me, it was an awakening about the future. And luckily for me, the last 15 years, I've been able to be a part of everything from the feature phone, having applications, to smartphones, to connected car. And really now, even though that's been a decade, we're just at the beginning of all this connection and how it's going to change our lives forever. Today, I just want to scope this all for you, talk about the market size and why we even care about this, look at what's driving the markets and what's the challenges that we're facing. I'm going to do a case study on the connected car, sort of giving the history, mostly because if you watch what's happening there, almost all IoT devices are going to follow the same path as we connect, and then talk a little bit about business opportunities for all of you going forward. So what is the Internet of Things, right? It's an ambiguous word sometimes, but it's really about devices connecting in one of two ways, and sometimes at the same time. One is the device connects itself to the cloud, right? It connects to the internet. And it either pushes data out to the cloud or it pulls data down, and it can do either one. The other is, and one of the most exciting things, is device to device, right? And so as you think about autonomous vehicles, there'll be a point where the cars will actually communicate with each other and keep us from running into things. And all of these things mesh together into a network where devices are talking to each other and where devices are talking to the internet. And that's where the power lies. It's this network effect of all these devices connected. The numbers are huge. What's super interesting to me is if you look at the graphic, on the bottom two areas you have the PC and you have smartphone. And this is the one that gets all the press today, right? It's a huge market, 5.4 billion devices soon. On the smartphone side, we've had PCs for 30 years. And the reality is it's less than 20% of the future market. So really the growth is in all of these embedded devices that are going to have radios either attached to LTE or Wi-Fi, or maybe just using Bluetooth to send signals back and forth from each other. That's the future of this experience. And how big is it? Well, we're going to have 90% of cars are going to be connected. I know today that nearly every manufacturer is looking at putting an LTE radio in their car. Initially, it was going to be because they wanted to provide other kinds of infotainment type services, but the manufacturers are waking up to the product value that they're going to get on being always connected. Right? They're going to know exactly what's wrong with that car. They're going to know how you've driven the car, how you're performing in the car. And from there, they can make dramatic changes to how they make products for you, right? And really specialize and simplify it. And then, of course, the wearable device market, we don't even know how big this one could be. Nearly everything could have a chip in it and could connect to the internet. I love this commercial, and I think you've all seen it, right? It's the student getting his first job. He's super excited. He's going to go to work for General Electric, right? And historically, that would have been in manufacturing. Well, today, companies like General Electric are spending millions and millions of dollars building software. And what software they're building? A lot of control software that actually connects devices together. So they are driving the Internet of Things at the enterprise level. And when big companies start to make massive investments in these areas, we can all draft behind those investments and create new innovative solutions for the industry. So it's less sexy, but enterprise IoT is dramatically bigger than consumer IoT. That shouldn't surprise anyone. There's a couple reasons for this. One is productivity gains that we can get off of IoT. Almost every service, by adding IoT to it that you provide today, can be made better by tracking it at an embedded level. The other thing is it allows for better customer service, better support, right? So packages can be tracked this way, providing all kinds of services to consumers. So it's not surprising that enterprises want to cut costs, expand ROI, and are investing heavily in this. And for a lot of you, this is the big opportunity, right? In your communities, in your towns, how do you help your local businesses exploit this advantage that the larger companies have in the national markets? This is a big opportunity. So why is IoT working today? Why is it happening? People have been talking about the Internet of Things probably for 20 years, but what's driving it? One of the important factors driving this is the smartphone. The mass production of smartphones is lowering the cost of all components. Why is that good? Right? Well, chips get cheaper. LCD screens get cheaper. Everything gets cheaper because we're shipping millions and millions and millions of smartphones a year. And from that, All of those components that go into designing a smartphone, those pieces are the same infrastructure used to create a wearable watch, to create other types of devices, enterprise devices. All of these volumes actually push costs dramatically down, making it much easier for us to try and experiment with new devices and services. And so that's what's driving it. So we can thank the smartphone and all of the advantages we get from that, but that's driving the economics of this industry today. So what are the challenges? One of the biggest challenges is interoperability. In fact, as I was talking before coming up here, managing the Internet of Things is actually pretty hard. Right, and we can hook up, Nest thermostats or remote control garage door openers and all these things, but all of a sudden you almost have to be an IT person when it breaks, right? And also on top of that, we've got large ecosystems that actually don't want to make it that easy to work together. So Google would like to have their own ecosystem and all of their products working seamlessly together, but not so great on the Apple side. Apple's the same way. You've got open source communities like Linux. You've got Microsoft still playing in those spaces. And all of this interoperability needs to come together. The good news is if you're dealing with enterprise, you can create solutions where those interoperability problems can disappear because you can go around it. The other thing that we have an advantage for, and why this has been better than other ecosystems, is that the smartphone has sort of been the catalyst for pulling it all together. So if I have an Apple smartphone, there's an app for my Nest product, even though Google makes that. And so there is this device in the middle where I can control everything. It just doesn't necessarily interoperably work together all that well. While it's important that we have manufacturing advantages with embedded technologies and radios that the smartphone is giving us, the fact is that wireless drives this industry. And having the devices connected all of the time in the way they want to, whether it's over LTE, over a lower bandwidth wireless product, over Bluetooth, or even over Wi-Fi, is really the trick to make IoT work. And I live in Seattle, very connected city. Grew up in Montana and drive there every year a couple of times. And there are still pockets of the world that aren't all that connected yet. So if you've built an IoT environment, you may get into dark areas if you're more than 2 miles away from the interstate. And how we deal with that and build business models and business cases and roll out wireless technology is really the key for creating this, not just in the United States, but we were looking at, with a large auto manufacturer, rolling out connected services for them across the worldwide market. And found out that we could only guarantee the delivery of connected services in 23 countries. 23 today. Isn't that amazing? And we, in North America, we have the US and Canada, we have 2 of them right here, right? Can't even guarantee it in Mexico that we could do the whole area. And when you get into Southeast Asia, when you get into Africa, you get into really remote areas, we don't have connectivity yet. And this is the driver that a lot of you are investing heavily in and trying to make the world a better place. The connected car market, it's near and dear to my heart. It's going to be huge. We're on a path towards fully autonomous driving, and the only way to enable fully autonomous driving is to connect the car to the cloud. We have to have it always updated, always available, otherwise it will break. The market's growing fast. It's one of those things where it takes time to design into the product. So we're looking at 2019 is probably where every car will have embedded LTE and radios connected to it. But once that happens, every generation of cars after that will have it. And suddenly we'll be able to update software continuously and do all these interesting things. Let's talk about the car for a minute. First of all, the car has been connected to the cloud for almost 30 years. It started out with very low-end wireless 2G, probably 1G radios, putting very small amounts of data back. So it's been connected a long time. That's sort of phase 1. And today in a lot of IoT environments, we're connecting that device to the cloud. And that's sort of the bare bones of what IoT is. The second phase is we start connecting humans to the device, right? And now we're creating an interface, either connecting the smartphone to it or creating interfaces in the car. And now the human is involved in operating the connected experience. The next phase is actually this machine-to-machine idea, right? This idea where the device senses itself in the whole ecosystem and actually connects with other devices like itself, or connects to give other information, right? So it'll connect to a traffic light, and it'll know that it's safe to proceed. And then in the car space, the final is sort of autonomous machine. And the idea is now the user's not so much a part of it. They're still part of the control of it, but the machines are now making decisions for themselves. And they're actually beginning to to plan their own being, right? We're still in control, but autonomous driving is all about the machine doing things that are better than we can, right? And that's where we're headed. So every IoT device and platform are going to follow this path. Some will be way faster. The car took 30 years. And some will be really fast, but we're going to follow the same path to get there. So who cares, right? It's fun to talk about the IoT, but at the end of the day, we got to make money, right? We're here to build businesses, and we're here to drive our businesses forward. The good news is, anyone in the connectivity business, wireless or providing infrastructure for that, it's a big opportunity, right? We don't have a network that's robust enough yet all across the United States and especially across the world. So doing core business in telematics services and hardware and things like that are still very important. There's going to be a huge opportunity in enterprise telematics services. Could be enterprise, could be local government, could be fire, could be safety. There's a huge opportunity to provide these backbone telematics services at a local level, driving ROI, improving services for everyone. And then finally, there's an opportunity to begin to take the network and begin to build value-added applications and services on top of the network. And this is the gold mine over time, because eventually wireless will be ubiquitous and tracking trucks and stuff is there. But once we have that platform in place, then all of a sudden applications and services can be delivered to your customers. And how you get good at that is probably the future, and IoT is going to be a really big part of growing your business that way. So thank you.
That drive towards autonomy obviously doesn't happen day one, but so Chris, how does that impact the rural guys? Because will we see it first in urban and then rural, or what will be the impact?
Yeah, so from my perspective, we're going to see autonomous vehicles grow in sort of two ways. One is going to be in urban centers. So you're going to see, because it's frankly the easiest place to actually roll this technology out, and you'll get the most benefit. Millennials, it's known today, are less likely to drive than any generation before themselves, and they're also clustering in major metropolitan areas. So we're going to see it there. The other place that I think has enormous promise that gets to the heart of sort of interstate commerce and transportation is when we think about long-haul trucking. And I think that will have a direct impact on the rural environment, because those trucks are going to be out there running routes, right? And be autonomous well before other vehicles in your marketplace is. And there's a reason for that. One is the economic benefits are enormous, safety benefits are enormous, and then it's also it's easier to be autonomous if you know where you're going, right? Humans, consumers, add to the mix their own thought process on what they want to go do, right? I'm going to go to the movie, I'm going to the store, whatever. Trucks can be coordinated and managed in a way that it can say, take this load from Seattle to Bismarck, North Dakota. And it's a well-prescripted way to do that. And so we're going to see that happen in rural markets much faster than we are to see consumer autonomy.